is writing to the church of Corinth, he doesn't know you exist.
They thought Jesus was already there.
Exactly, yeah. And so he's writing to a particular city in a particular context with a particular set of circumstances and problems that doesn't mean we can't extrapolate wisdom and take away principles that apply to our day and age today. The point I'm trying to make is we're not the center of what Paul's trying to say in Corinthians. And so I think one of the ways we can get back to learning how to read our Bible is by starting where we need to start with Jesus.
What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Now, let's just get to it. The whole secular sacred divide. There is no distinction in the scriptures. Some of us have trust issues with God, and some of us, it's like, does God really got us? You can't engage the culture with the gospel that first has not engaged you. Like, you know how people are like, oh, that's just who I am. Nah.
Drop the mic. Drop the mic. Drop the mic.
Shaping the code.
What I heard earlier is how often we try to place ourselves in the Word and how much stuff we shouldn't be doing that. A lot of what I see in Christian culture today is how much it points back to self. And so you speak of the importance of how much the Word, things we're giving in sermons, how much that needs to point to God, and then the balance between how much that could actually be applicable to our life.
I can start. I think the whole point of the Bible is about one person, and his name is Jesus. So in the Old Testament, our favorite characters are a type of Christ, right? So you're not David. David is a type of Christ, right? And so when we look at David taking down Goliath, that's not you taking down your enemies. You want to know who you are in that story? You're the scared Israelites looking for a savior. That's where you are in this story. And so I think we need to, so Old Testament, everything is pointing to Jesus. The Gospels is pointing to Jesus because he's here. And then in the epistles, all the letters are pointing back to Jesus. So whether it's Paul, Peter, John, they're writing about how to make sense of life in regard to the life that Jesus lived and the sacrifice that he made. And I think that we have to go back to understanding, again, the Bible is not about you, it's about Jesus. And I will boldly say that the Bible isn't actually written to you.
Come on.
It's written for you, right? So when Paul is writing to the church of Corinth, he doesn't know you exist.
They thought Jesus was already there.
Exactly, yeah. And so he's writing to a particular city in a particular context with a particular set of circumstances and problems that doesn't mean we can't extrapolate wisdom and take away principles that apply to our day and age today. The point I'm trying to make is we're not the center of what Paul's trying to say in Corinthians. And so I think one of the ways we can get back to learning how to read our Bible is by starting where we need to start, with Jesus. Where is Jesus in the text? Tim Keller always talks about the best sermons always keep Christ at the center and always brings it back to the gospel.
Yes.
So whether we're talking about how does money relate to the gospel? How does friendship relate to the gospel? How does vocation relate to the gospel? How does friendship relate to the gospel? Every point of the text and the story is to show us who Jesus is.
Yes.
And so starting there, and then I'll say too, like you can't learn about yourself until you fully understand who God is. So I'll give one story and I'll be done. Jesus asked the question, who do people say that I am? And his disciples say, oh, some say you're John the Baptist, some say you're Elijah, some say you're prophet. They say all these things. And then Jesus is like, okay, well, what do you got? Who do you think I am? And then Peter responds back by saying, you are the Messiah, the Christ. What I love about Jesus' response is this. He said, flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. And then watch this. And then he says, and you are Peter, and on you I will build my church. Watch this. It is when Peter discovered who Jesus was that he discovered who he was. And so I think we just live in a day and age where we're so fascinated with figuring ourselves out. So when we look to the text, we're trying to find ourselves. If you seek Jesus and you find Jesus, you find who you are.
Yeah, I also just want to, because like there's so many of us are at different stages of our faith journey. So everything that Easy E said is 100% right. But like I also recognize the challenge that there is for some people who are just starting up, who maybe don't really have the muscle to really sit there. Because like it's kind of like I remember the feeling of like trying to open up my Bible and just being like, I don't really know what to do about this. So sometimes the easiest thing to do, or just even a starting point to get the ball rolling, to even have context or framework, is to turn on a sermon. You know, so I think it's always a great place to start, but it's just important that you don't stay there, because what the Word does tell us, and we've kind of touched on this earlier, is how important it is for us to abide in God's presence, because that's the only real place that there will be real transformation. I think us hearing someone else's regurgitated version of it is, I think, a good starting point, because ultimately what it's doing is it's pointing the arrow in a certain direction. You're like, oh, okay, there must be something going on over there. But then it's up to us also to go into that place on our own and to discover that to ourselves. And man, I can even tell you, this is like an ongoing challenge for me, because like in a world where you're constantly being pulled by all the different responsibilities between being a dad and someone who has a job and then has to deal with this person and that person. Sometimes you just want to, do the Hot Pocket version. You're like, okay, let me just put it in for 30 seconds and let me get my fix. But like the true like meeting with Jesus is the only thing that can really, really give you true revelation and change you from the inside out. That's the reason why we refer to Jesus as being the vine, because we have to be connected to him. Yeah. So unless we're really in that place, then we're not going to really get to see God for who he is. But that's not to say anything negative about us who are just starting to get the ball rolling, who are using some of these resources as a way to get our foot in the door. So.
I 100% agree, because I will turn on a good sermon all the time. And usually it is what leads my study. But I think using Ebenezer's rubric for which sermons to watch would be helpful. Is Jesus at the center? Is this pushing me back to the gospel, or is this sermon about me? Because it is a lot of me.